you're going to wait for the sound of metal against metal, but it's never going to happen, right? And I thought, well, that's a bit much, isn't it? Oh my God, it's unbelievable. These people are drivers beyond belief. I mean, there's an accident about to happen, but never does every few minutes, right? So that was an extraordinary experience. I had 4 hours of that going out to this hotel at the mountain. I got into this hotel and I slept for 2 days with the curtains shut, to the point where I would wake up and not know if it was night or day. And they were coma sleeps. I mean, I have them all the time, but this was massive coma sleep. About 2 days, I would wake up and whatever, but then I go back to sleep again. And the arthritis began to ease and continued to do so. I was using my mind as well. I'm not having it. I'm not having it. I'm not having it. But that was a turning point. And it's interesting you should mention that mountain, because I was under that mountain that happened. Funny enough.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, I was there a few years ago. I've been back there a couple of times, but I could still feel the frequency of Ramana Maharishi, to the point where, if I went and sat in his cave or at his Samadhi shrine, I would just go into deep states of meditation. And I know that wasn't my frequency. That was me tapping into his frequency. So, maybe you got a little bit of his
maybe
consciousness absorption.
Kind of interesting coincidence, though, isn't it? Given you mentioned it.
Very, very, very. So, David, I wrote this down in my book. So just to close, the Bhagavad Gita says the number one attribute of a consciousness realized being is fearlessness. And then I read this right at the end of your book, and it really stood out to me. Deleting fear of what others think of what we say is the first base of taking our mind back from the simulation, its architects and its operatives. Without this first step, there can be no other steps. So can you take us out, David, with just a little bit of what is the role of fearlessness as it relates to where we are and where we need to go?
Well, if you ask people for their top 5 fears, and they were honest, a couple of them would likely be speaking in public. Why? Because the fear of speaking in public is the fear of the reaction of the public. So people get very fearful of that, because they are looking at the audience to give them confirmation of who they are. They want the audience to say, oh yeah, I agree with that. Oh, he's intelligent, isn't he? They don't want the audience to say, load of rubbish, mate, load of rubbish, you're mad, you are. They don't want that, because they fear, and this is the other one that will be in the top 5, because they're both connected, the fear of what other people think. That is the prison that almost everyone lives in to some extent, and most people live in to a fundamental extent. What will people say if I believe this? What will people say if I say this? And thus, what you're doing is you are handing your sovereign spiritual self to the collective. And where does the collective overwhelmingly get its perception of reality from? The system, from the schools, the universities, the academics, the journalists at Pass Forum, the media, government announcements, etc. They, therefore, when you fall for this trap of having your life controlled by the fear of what other people think, you are giving your unique self to the system, because the people who you fear the reaction of have got their perceptions from that very system. And this is how it kind of works, and it's becoming more obvious when you look around the world today. You program the population to believe the narrative, and then you make most of the rest of the population who doesn't believe the narrative fearful of saying so. And in that way, you negate any challenge from that source as well. And see, what happened to me, I was fortunate, and people might think, what do you mean fortunate? But in 1990-91, I was a very well-known television presenter in Britain. And I had my spiritual awakening, and I did and said things that were anything but what you would expect a TV presenter to say. And I became, in historical proportions, a figure of ridicule and fun. I mean, I couldn't walk down any street in this country without being laughed at. Wider now. He believes lizards run the world, all that stuff. And one of two things happen when you experience that level of ridicule. One is you withdraw from society and you sit shaking in the corner, or you say, I am me, I am free. This is what I think. You don't have to believe it. I'm not asking you to believe it. But you have a right to think whatever you like. But you know something? So do I. And I'm going to. And I'm going to speak it. And so the freedom that comes from that is absolutely extraordinary, because there's no mental gymnastics going on before you say what you think. You don't go through, oh, well, how can I put this so they won't think I'm crazy? I don't care if you think I'm crazy. It's of no importance to me, only to you. This is what I think. And you speak your truth. And because I went through that process of extreme ridicule, it set me free of the fear of what other people think. And so when the whole reptilian thing came a few years later, I didn't go through what will people think if I say this. My only criteria was, can, on the evidence that I've compiled, can I justify going with this? Yes, I'm going with it. And how people receive, people say to me, didn't you think that people would laugh when you said reptile? Do you know I'd worked that out? Do you know I had? But I couldn't care less, because I'm interested in the truth, not a round of applause or a statue. Thank you very much. So that is, if you don't go through that first step of letting go the fear of what other people think, family members, whatever, it doesn't matter, of speaking your truth, then you're not going to go any further. Because your mind is not going to expand out of that, because you're going to be editing yourself because you don't really want to go there. Because if you do, well, my God, what will people think? It's the first step. Speak your truth. And I'll tell you from long experience of this, it doesn't matter what people think of you, because they'll think something different tomorrow. And if you don't speak your truth today, when what you would have said comes true, and you say, oh, I knew this was going to happen, what are people going to say? Oh, yeah, of course you did. But when you speak your truth and you get the comeback and ridicule for it, people can't unhear something. And if what you're saying has validity, it will eventually be shown to be so. And at that point, people will go, that bloke said this, didn't he? But if you hadn't have said it and taken the ridicule, they wouldn't say that. So it's the first step above all steps, is letting go the fear of what other people think. Because not only does that set you free to speak your truth, It sets you free to seek it and not put any barriers in where that truth will take you, only pursuit of it for its own sake. And the other thing I would say that is crucial to awakening, you know, I'm not into all the guru stuff and what have you, and I'm also not into something else. When I first, I mean, we talked about this earlier. When I first came across the what was called the New Age, and I would watch some New Age speakers and what have you, and I think, well, this awakening stuff's a bit bloody complicated, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's like, go on a quest, do this, do that. What? Green tea? What? Can't stand green tea, mate. I ain't drinking that. But what's kind of come to me over the years is the difference between asleepness and awakeness is self-identity. End of frickin' story. What do you identify the I with? The labels of a human life? Do you self-identify with, I am David Icke, born in Leicester, England in 1952, brought up in a council house, became a footballer, went into journalism, came a voting for the Green Party, kind of had this explosion in his head and went on this other direction? Do you self-identify with him? Or do you self-identify with, I am an expression of the all that is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief human experience, which has been labeled David Icke, born in Leicester, 1952, etc., etc. If you self-identify with the human labels, you self-identify with limitation, you self-identify with I can't, you self-identify with I have no power, what can I do? You self-identify with the consciousness, and suddenly all those things disappear, because you have access to the ultimate power. You can dictate your life and not have life dictate you. I say start living life and stop letting life live you. When you fear what other people think, you are letting life live you. And the self-identity with consciousness rather than the labels gives you something else. You lose the fear of death. Yep. Because you realize there's no such thing, it doesn't exist. You are consciousness. You are consciousness having a brief experience in a, quote, body, or you are consciousness having an infinite experience outside of a body. Either way, you're still infinite consciousness awareness on an eternal journey of exploring forever, eternally. So many things come from that, some of which we just touched on. What does infinite awareness care what some journalist says about? What does it care about what someone in the street is saying to them or laughing at them? What does it matter? I'm all that is, has been, and ever can be. I'm on an eternal journey, an infinite journey. This is one moment within an infinite now moment. What does it really matter? What does it matter what people think of me now? What people say about me now? What does it matter? What matters is I express my truth of being what I am, all that is, has been, and ever can be. This is me. This will always be me. This is eternally me. And whatever's happening in the moment is not that much of an impact on that. So suddenly, you don't care what other people think. It doesn't mean you don't listen to them and think, well, is there any wisdom in this? Because, there might be, but you don't care just because they say things about you don't like. You don't fear authority. Authority, what is authority? It's people claiming to have authority. That's all they are. So you don't fear them. You don't fear the consequences. Because when you reach this point where you self-identify with consciousness, and the labels you perceive as experiences the consciousness is having and not you, then everything changes, because really nothing matters in the sense that it mattered before. Like, oh, how could she say about that about me? It's disgusting what she said. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And what this simulation is doing is pulling awareness, consciousness into the cul-de-sacs of thinking that things matter when they don't. It is what it is. And in every now moment, it is what it is. And you deal with it and you move on. And you don't get pulled out of this sense of who you really are into the illusions of the simulation. You are one step back from it, because the whole foundation of the simulation is to pull the divine spark into the cul-de-sacs, the tents, the eddies of illusion. And when you self-identify the I with the eddies, the tents, they gotcha when you go. They're just experiences. I am that which is having the experience. Then the illusion ceases to entrap you in the same way. And illusions only control you when you think they're real. When you know they're not, they lose power over you. And so it's self-identity. And it's letting go of the fear of what other people think. And the two are completely connected. Because once you hear, who cares what people think of you? They really will think something else tomorrow.
David, thank you so much. So inspiring. My big intention for this chat with you, it was really to provide people with an example and motivation to do just that, which is to start speaking their truth more freely and fearlessly. And for me, you have always been such a powerful ambassador for that, whether you want to identify as a yogi or not. In my mind, in my worldview, you are a supreme yogi because you do exactly that. You stay anchored to your truth and you speak it fearlessly. And for me, that is exactly what yoga is really about. So I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you are doing within the simulation and beyond it. You're doing a great job. And this has been a real treat. So thank you so much.
Thanks very much. It's been a real pleasure. You know, I get asked a lot of questions about the conspiracy, names, dates, places, all this stuff. And I do that, and I've done it for 33 years because people need to know it. But my passion, what drives me, are the sort of things we've been talking about. Because the conspiracy only exists because we've forgotten them.
Absolutely. Well, David, I'm around, and I hope that at a later point in time.
I hope we can do it again, mate. I really enjoyed it.
Cool. Thank you, David. Well, I'll let you get on with your day. Thank you so much.